Welcome to the only show bringing cops and the community together for some real talk and some real listening. This is uncut. This is uncensored. This is Black and Blue Live. Welcome to Black and Blue Live, everybody. How you guys doing out there? What's going on,
Welcome,
Lizzie?
Sam. Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm excellent. How's your Sunday shaping out, young lady?
Whew, family, hanging out, a few other dental issues, but doing good. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited. We're going to roll with this.
Yes. Today's topic is going to be a good one. We got some real good guests on here today. So, let's get into that here in a minute. First, I want to let everybody know, please, thank you for joining us here today on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, wherever you at. Tell your friends, tell your family, comment, everything. We love you. And we'll get this conversation popping today. You know what I mean?
Let's make it happen, Captain.
Yes, indeed. So let me introduce our first guest here. She is a founder. She's the founder of 1211 Partners. That is a survivor-led nonprofit focused on supporting sex trafficking survivors. Everybody, please help us welcome in Kathy Mckibben Gibbons.
Hello, Miss Kathy.
Good evening. So glad to be here.
Joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We appreciate you. Our next guest here, she is a law enforcement officer out in the great state of New Mexico. She is assigned to a human trafficking task force. Everybody, please help us welcome in Deanna Young.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me on the show today.
Hello. Welcome.
Thank you. I was telling her earlier, her background there is really bright. She looks like she in heaven.
Right, just floating.
I'm sorry, guys.
We need that.
It's all good. Yeah. All white and everything. Yeah. Thank you. We appreciate you. Appreciate you coming on. Our last guest here, she is a case manager with Journey Out. That is another nonprofit organization committed to helping victims of human and sex trafficking leave that lifestyle. Everyone, please help us welcome in Miss Tika Thornton.
Hello, Miss Tika.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us.
All right. So thank you. Let's bring everybody on here. Thank you. The applause, everybody, for our guests here.
Yes.
Thank you. So today's topic is a heavy one. So we will keep it as respectful as we can. Everybody out there, your comments are welcome on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and Periscope. Please send those in, and we will get those out for our guests as well. I know I introduced you guys already, but why don't you tell us one by one exactly a little bit more about yourself for our audience. We'll start with you, Kathy. Go ahead.
Yeah, like you mentioned, my name is Kathy Mckibben Gibbons, and I'm co-founder of 1211 Partners, which is a survivor-led nonprofit organization to help support overcomers of trafficking. And so this is my life. This is what I've been called to ever since I got out. this is just what I've been called to. So this is what I do. Aside from that, though, I do have a life outside of this, which is I'm a wife, a mom, and all that other stuff, a playwright, and I'm grateful to be here.
All right. Thank you. We appreciate you. And next up, Miss Deanna, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Deanna Young. I'm a special agent with the New Mexico Attorney General's office out here in New Mexico in Albuquerque. That's where our actual office is. I've been working in human trafficking for about 3 years. Before that, I was a deputy with Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department. And like I said, I'm happy to be on the show today.
All right. Thank you for joining us. And last but certainly not least, Tika, tell everybody about yourself.
I am a crisis response case manager for the organization Journey Out. And I basically work real close with law enforcement in order to assist them with the victims so they can take care of the case. And as like my survivor sister said, I'm very grateful that I can use my pain as in purpose to help the survivors and the victims of sex trafficking. And I am also a 90s hip hop head and a Star Wars lover.
Yes.
Yes. All right. I can relate to both of those. Yes, indeed. That's what I'm talking about. All right. Well, thank you, ladies, for joining us here today. We appreciate you. Appreciate you.
So, obviously, this is new to some people and not others. Special Agent Young, would you kind of explain to us in our audience what human trafficking is and give us somewhat of a definition of that?
So, my definition of human trafficking, as well as the state of New Mexico, it's a modern day form of modern day slavery. So that's exactly what it is. It consists of someone benefiting from another person through force, fraud, or coercion, where someone's actually either labor trafficking or sex trafficking that we've seen a lot of. So that's our definition of human trafficking.
Miss Kathy and Miss Tika, would you like to add anything else to that or expound on any of that?
I guess I would just echo that. And in addition, I love the quote that Polaris uses is that it's really just stealing people's freedom for profit. And that's legit what we're talking about. So that's what I would add.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Tika, you wanted to speak out on that?
Well, it has been one of the fastest growing industries, illegal industries, because most people, well, the people that are in a lot of criminal activities, they can only sell a drug or let's say a gun or property one time, where they can sell someone over and over again without having to invest any money back into it. So it is it's sad, but it has become very lucrative for that underground world of criminality.
Yeah. And Kathy and
It's
Tika,
interesting.
I'm sorry, real quick. You two were involved on the sex trafficking side, but it involves a whole range of things in human trafficking. Can we talk about that a little bit real quick before we get into your individual stories? You got labor. There's a whole myriad of things. Can we speak on that? Probably Deanna.
Definitely, I'm sorry.
Wait. Yeah, go ahead. Somebody jump in there. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Tika.
There's a lot of things that come along or that are hand in hand with human trafficking. There's a lot of other um, um, like violent crimes that come along with it. Drugs play a huge part. Violence play a huge part. And then there's some things that we don't really notice, far as like the how sex trafficking and labor trafficking actually kind of intersects in some ways. A lot of the clients that we work with here at Journey Out, when times were slow or when weather was bad, they started to get into selling drugs and or having them do credit cards or some type of fraud. So we have seen that a lot of these people that have been subjected to sex trafficking have also been subjected to labor trafficking in some kind of way as well.
Yeah. I can imagine. That. And Deanna, how long you been working in the sex trafficking and the human trafficking field? How long you been doing that task force?
So I've been on the task force for 3 years now, working in human trafficking and sex trafficking. Yes.
What's the Attorney General's role in that?
So we're actually the clearinghouse. So all of our Polaris tips for human trafficking, they come through our office first. And then they go to HSI, which is our Homeland Security Office, as well as any other part of our task force. So we actually see the tip first. If we're not in that area, because some of our tips happen 4 hours away from where I'm at, we send our task force over there. And we have a lot of labor trafficking that does happen along the border, because that's where our actual agricultural farms are at. But here in Albuquerque, you see the girls that are in sex trafficking and that are walking the track. We also have a big transgender community that's now involved with sex trafficking, and they're being violated as well and kidnapped and raped and things like that and brought into that life. So that's what we've seen a lot of.
Yeah. Terrible, terrible. And real quick, I guess it doesn't have to be real quick, but Kathy, I see there on your title that you are a survivor of human trafficking. If you don't mind, could you tell us a little bit about your story?
Sure. Um, One of the things I like to start off with just how I got into it. One of the misconceptions is that we're looking for that big white van with the dark tinted windows and the scary cars that are going to come and abduct people, right? Though that does happen, it's typically victims are typically victimized by someone that they trust, right? Someone that they've built a relationship with, someone that they at some point in time were comfortable with, and that's how it happened for me. So I came to Texas. I'm from Texas. I came into Texas as a teenager. Good home, good family, all that stuff, right? Good mom. My mom was a single parent, but I mean, she was great, and so I didn't have a lot of the things that would leave me at risk, I would say, right? So the one thing that was my vulnerability was like a fatherless home, but my upbringing was sweet. It was great. I met a mutual friend, first year of college, through a mutual friend, met this guy. He was in a band. It was a group of guys, and these group of guys were, hey, like, let's hang out and, let's chill and kick it and all that kind of stuff, right? I met these individuals through my friend who was an artist. She was in the music industry. So she went to the talent show, and this is how we got, introduced to these guys. The guys were like, hey, bring your friends. Like we got all this going on, and we want to kick it with you. And so she invited us. Literally, I didn't even meet the person firsthand directly. This was like through a mutual friend. And so she invited us, and we just started kicking it with them. This guy band and my group of girlfriends, and we just all started kicking it. And this lasted for about 3 to 6 months, I would say, of literally just hanging out. They were known artists in Houston, Texas, and beyond. And so they were very popular. I grew up, my mom's Jamaican. So when I was growing up, it was like, hey, you under my roof, you go work or you go to school, and that's just it. There's no such thing as partying and all that kind of stuff. So when I got these invitations, for me, it was like, oh, like, this is cool. Like, I get to go backstage and we going in green rooms and all this kind of stuff. I'm getting in places that I never thought that I would get in. And so that's how it started for me, like just a great relationship. I'm not gonna lie, we were having fun. And so the invitation started to change slowly but surely. So like after about that 6-month mark, I started to get solo invitations. So the person who was like the head of the lead of the band, the leader of the band, he was like the most talented, like you can always tell when someone's that guy, right? Like all his friends are following him, and all his, he talks the most, and he has the gift of gab and all of that, right? That person started giving me attention. And, he was like, hey, why don't you come hang out with me? Not your friends this time, though. I just want to get to know you because it's something about you. That's how the conversation started. And fast forward, we started kicking it. We started hanging out. I started meeting this individual by myself. And literally, I thought that, before I knew it, I thought that I was in some kind of relationship. I really thought that he was like a boyfriend. Missed all the red flags. I'm not going to say they weren't there. I just didn't see them because there's this image that someone, I did a presentation one time, or was at a presentation one time, and there's this image of like a man holding out like a bunch of red flags, but then the individual that is seeing those red flags is interpreting those as red roses. So it looks like red roses when the man is literally saying, hey, danger, danger, right? That's kind of how it was for me. I wish I had that visual, but that's kind of how it was for me because I missed every red flag. It was just cool hanging out. And so, fast forward, we're into like a year now, right? You see that white van didn't come pick me up. I'm like in it with this individual that I'm thinking that I'm trusting. I love him, and oh my gosh, like I can't believe this is for me. And then towards the end of that year, that's when he dropped the plan. That's when he was like, hey, like I'm about to start my business, and I'm about to start this record label, and I really think that I want you to be a part of that. Like, it's just me and you against the world. And, we're going to be rich and we're going to do this. And so the plan was that we were to leave Houston, Texas, and just go 4 hours away to Dallas, Texas for about 3 months to meet some investors. Listening to that story in hindsight is like, okay, come on. But I didn't know anything about business. I didn't know anything about music. Whatever he told me. And so we prepared to go to Dallas. I was a little hesitant because I'd never been away from my people, from my actual friends and family for that long. But by that time I was like, he was my entire world. So I had completely isolated myself from my system, and my moral compass was completely broken down at that point. And so, yeah, anything that he said, I was like, okay, yeah, this is going to be our life. I'm going to go, we're going to make a family together, and it's just going to be great. And literally the night that I got to Dallas, that's when literally a switch just flipped. And Mr. Charming, Mr. Oh my gosh, he likes me, he loves me, turned into a complete monster, just like that. And there was no time to process. It was an outer body experience. We'll talk about some of the language later, but he had his bottom like quickly trained me on what to do and what I'm going to wear, taking pictures. It was nonstop. It was like, I had no time to figure out, okay, what is happening? There's no curriculum for this. Like, what happened? There's nobody's going to tell me what's going on. And so very quickly I ended up, that first week that I was there, men just started coming to the room. I was just told to do what they say, yada, yada, yada. And then I was put out on the street, which is something that he promised he would never do, because even as he was exploiting me inside this room, he promised, like, well, I love you still, and that's why I'm like doing this to you. Or if he would abuse me, he'd pull me to the side, just like an abusive situation, pull me to the side and be like, I'm only doing this for show. You know that, right? Because it's just me and you. We have to do this. And so, but he promised, he's like, but I'll never, ever put you like out with the other girls. I still didn't even know what that meant, because all I knew is there were girls that didn't come back. And so some crazy, I guess because of the trauma bond, I really just thought that he was in it, like, for me still. When he put me out, that's when I realized that I was about to die. I was like, this is real. Like, this is my life. And I just, every moment after that was just survival. Fast forward, made it out. It's a crazy way how I made it out, how my exit happened, but it didn't include law enforcement. It didn't include like a bunch of like SWAT and rescue and all that kind of stuff that we see on the TV. It didn't include that for me. It was just like God. Honestly, it was just a moment, an opportunity that I saw and that I capitalized on, as far as like just a small window of opportunity to make him think that, I would never leave. And I left, and had my brother and my sister-in-law come pick me up. And, the story goes on after that, because I say that restoration is a lifelong process. So I would like to say that upon that exit, like that night, I never looked back and changed my life forever, but that wasn't the case. I never went back to trafficking. Like, I never went back to a pimp. I never went back to a trafficker, but it was really hard for me to get my life back. I was in them, I was in some very, very unstable situations after that. It took me a while to heal. So fast forward, here I am today, and that's why I do what I do.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that story.
Just before we ask any other questions, Ms. Kathy, again, thank you. You said so many key things that I definitely want to tap into our viewers, and I'm sure everyone else here can tap in on that. But one, the grooming process wasn't an overnight process like we see in Taken, right? So, and you had mentioned his bottom. Would you expound a little bit for those squares who don't understand what a bottom is? Can you explain what a bottom is? And then maybe give a little more detail on the grooming, because I know there are people watching who have family members and they don't understand why they won't come out, or because you said I had a good foundation, but at some point there was a disconnect, whether he used that against you or whether he made you feel like you couldn't go home. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that? And Tika, if you also want to jump in on that too, to help our viewers really understand how ugly this process becomes, or the web, I should say, the entanglement.
Absolutely. So we tried to kind of break that grooming process down, that process of seduction, however you want to call it. And it started with it starts with number one, befriend. That's like the first step. And as recall from my story, it was someone that I trusted and I was hanging out with, and he was my friend. I thought he was my friend. So stage one is befriend. The second stage is alienation. Oh, I'm sorry, intoxication. So it wasn't drugs and alcohol for me, but my intoxication was that glamorous lifestyle, because I wasn't, going out in the clubs in high school and stuff like that. And I wasn't like I didn't have a big party life. So when it was introduced to me, it was like, oh, like this is the deal, right? And so my intoxication was a glamorous lifestyle. And after intoxication, that's when they start to alienate you. So I was literally into it with my mom. I stayed with my mom at the time. By the end of that year, I wasn't living with my mom. I was living with a friend. So he was successful in like just, tearing that relationship apart. And it would sound like,
Yep.
just sowing seeds like, oh my gosh, you have a curfew? Like, you're too old to have a curfew. Like, come on, you should be on your own by now. Like, you should be further on. And I did have, after high school, that first year of college, I did have a child, right? And I never lead with that, because once you lead with that, people are like, oh, well, that was it. That was your vulnerability, young mom. But that wasn't my case, because my mom was solid. Even though I had a child, I was in school, I was in college.
Mm-hmm.
My mom was like, I got her. You go have a career and be great. And then we'll figure this out. So that wasn't my lack. However, he did use that in my face and was like, don't you want to be like a better mom? Like, don't you want to take care of your own child and stuff like that? So that was the alienation. Then it was isolation. So the friends that I was hanging out with and those solo invitations that started coming made, he was very successful in creating that divide between my support network, my friends, the people that I was confiding in and talking to. Now I felt like all I could do is confide in him. The only person that I could talk to is him, right? So then comes, so that was the isolation, and then desensitize is that next step, to where you're like, he's brainwashed you so much, or this person has brainwashed you so much that all of your moral compass, what you've grown up with and what you know from right from wrong, now it's like twisted. Now whatever
Up
he says
is
is
down.
right is right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever he says is right
Down
is
is
right,
up.
and nothing else. Exactly. And then the last step is capitalization, and that is when they drop the plan. Well, that's when for me, he dropped the plan and was like, man, we should start a business. And that was it, and took off from there. And so that was like those stages of the grooming process, the stages of seduction. And it takes a long time. But if you notice, he was very successful in breaking me down, taking away my identities, layer by layer. He stripped everything that was instilled in me, every moral that I had, every worthiness of myself, confidence, all of that. He just belittled it. And it felt so good. So it was so deceiving, right? Because it's like, no, you don't need to do that. Do what I say, because I have, I'm looking out for you. And it was like, it was just a process.
Right.
So, when we ask, well, why didn't you just break up with him? Why didn't you leave? People need to understand that, those trauma bonds are real. They're very, very, very real. And yeah, that's how the grooming process. And then the bottom, you asked a question about the bottom, and the bottom is just an individual that has been trafficked. It's a victim of trafficking, that probably was with his or her trafficker the longest, and by some way or some reason has now gained rank with that trafficker. So maybe if like I'm this right hand person, maybe I don't have to go out as much, or maybe I get, the abuse is less, or some kind of incentive, or you just feel like this is my life and I'm gonna run with you, because that trauma bond again, I love you, let's do this, right? But typically that bottom is trafficked, and that's the person who we always see prosecuted. That's the person who gets the prostitution charge, or compelling prostitution, right? And so because she's there to be the bottom, she's there to take the charge, she's there to be that right hand person. So it's tough when I see bottoms. When I go on operations, it's real tough for me to see bottoms going to jail, because it could have been me.
Yeah.
Right.
And then Tika, you talked about earlier that you're a survivor as well, but you kind of work with law enforcement. What sort of things do you do in your daily? as a case worker?
So, most of the things that I do is when law enforcement has a victim, they contact me. I take care of the victim's immediate needs, whether it be food, shelter, support, therapy, medical, whatever it is that they need, I take care of them. The first 72 hours are very, very important with that person, with that survivor, because that's when they're the most vulnerable. Okay, trust is not really the first thing that they lead with, and I'm that first face in that first system of trust that they're starting to build with someone. And then from there, I'm also at different operations. We have a PDP program, prostitution diversion program at our organization. We also are piloting a beacon program, so it's a pre-filing diversion program. And we're in the police stations when they arrest the people, and we let them know about our organization. And then from there, like I said, we're tethered to the client. Whatever needs that they need, we try and help them out with. If some of them want to go home, wherever home is, we'll take care of that as well. But mainly, I believe my purpose is to show them that there is life after trafficking. My story started in the early 90s, and I was in the life for 11 years, and I am
Mhm.
18 years out of the life. And so when I
Go
show
ahead,
them that,
girl.
regardless if they're in the beginning or in their end of their process, I let them know there weren't organizations like Journey Out to help me out when I was in the thick of it. Okay. When I was in it, it was payphones and pagers. Okay. There was no internet. There was no, a lot of the resources that were around. I was 12 years old and I was considered a 12-year-old prostitute, where now it is looked at completely different now.
Oh yeah.
And I let them know that, you know, number one, it took resilience. And I let them know if I can make it, you guys can definitely make it, okay? Because I didn't have an understanding of a lot of the things that are going on, a lot of the theories and the psychological games and um just the things that were going on with me before I got trafficked, right? Like for me, my story is very different from Kathy's. I was groomed before I was trafficked. Okay, I come from generational trauma, deep generational trauma, and I was a runaway at the age of 12. And because of the physical, abuse and sexual abuse that I had endured before I got trafficked, the grooming process was very easy. I was ready for it, you know.
Mm.
My story basically started out as I ran away from the home at the age of 3, I mean at the age of 13, excuse me, 12. But I had been sexually abused since my earliest, I probably say, was probably about 4 or 5 when I can really remember. And it escalated throughout the years until I was the age of 10, and then it reached its peak, right, of sexual assault. And then I told my family members at the age of 12. I was not believed. And of course, if a child is not being believed that someone had violated you in the worst way, of course, that made you feel like no one really cares about you. Okay. You're
Hmm.
saying that someone hurt you in the most personal way possible, and people in your family are saying that it's not true. And I left home, like I said, about 2 or 3 times at the age of 12. And I'm from an area called the Jungles in South Central Los Angeles. And there's a lot of crime, there's a lot of drugs, there's a lot of violence that go on. It's basically it's a it, it's a project that looks nicer than most projects in Los Angeles. I would say that. And I was walking around when I ran away from home in the same area that I was living in. 12-year-old logic. And it started to rain, and there was a man who pulled up on the side. Now, we always talk about stranger danger, right? Stranger danger is usually some creepy guy, and and that's what, like Kathy said, some white van pulling up with some guy with some bad teeth,
Tinted
looking
windows.
gross and disgusting.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Exactly. So this is what I was trying to stay away from. But there was this guy with this nice smile, with this nice car, and he was asking me, "Are you okay?" Right? So this couldn't be a bad person, right? This has to be someone who is here to help me and wants to make sure that I'm okay. So I accepted his invitation to come and sit in the car with him. We talked for a short period of time, and then he introduced me to marijuana, to weed, right? And my family has done all kind of drugs. I had my father was on crack. I had uncles that were alcoholics. I had a couple cousins and uncles that smoke weed. And so I was thinking like the lesser of the evils would be weed, right? So it's just like some giggles, some munchies, like, oh, okay, that's not too bad. I could try that, right? And not knowing that he laced it. And I woke up in a strange place. I was tied up. I was, being beaten, and I was being raped by many different men. So that was my experience, being trafficked. That was like my first experience. I was with that man. I probably say it seemed like an eternity, but in reality, it was probably about 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. And when I was found by the owner or the landlord or whoever, I wasn't tied up at the time, right? So, like Kathy, there's a meme on Facebook that I think about, right? And I wish I would have it here with me as well. But there's a horse that is tied up by like a little plastic lawn chair. Like the horse is strong enough to just walk away with the chair. It's not held down, but the mentality made it seem like I can't go anywhere. I have to stay. I could have
Yeah.
opened the door and walked out because the guy was gone for like maybe a day, and I could have just opened two doors and been out of there, right? But I was in such bad shape, and mentally as well as physically, I couldn't do that. So when the landlord or whoever the guy was opened the door, he asked me like, what the hell are you doing here? And I was just like, well, I'm not telling you anything until you get me out of here. And out of here to where was there was nothing. There was no game plan. But like I said, I was in such bad shape. I literally had to crawl out of the place and crawl into his door, um, of his inside of his car. And he drove around until nightfall. And he stopped at a strip mall where there was a laundromat, and there was a lady there, a little Hispanic lady who saw me. And I was wearing a dingy, bloody, dirty t-shirt at the time. And she got me some clothes from that people left at the laundromat. She bought me some chanclas from the corner store so I can have some shoes on my feet. And she bought me some food. And a lot of people would think that it ended there, but it didn't. Instead of me wanting to go home where I would have been gotten yelled at, would have got a whooping, I would have been punished for being out, not knowing everything that I went through. I decided just to stay out in the streets. I was in and out of the life, like I said, for 11 years. Um, 6 of those years were under a pimp. I was I had no loyalty. I had no Romeo pimp. There was no love affair. I knew what their purpose was in my life. I had probably about 10 to 15 different pimps in a matter of like 6 years. As soon as I got beaten or when I was the last girl standing, I left because I didn't want to be a bottom. I don't want that much responsibility. And I didn't want all the money to have to come from me, right? And so it was survival at a certain point for me. I knew I was underage and I couldn't get an apartment. I couldn't get a hotel room. There weren't any like youth shelters that they are now, or the ones that I wasn't aware of at the time, to seek like some type of refuge. And then I was also addicted to the life, you know. I wasn't on any drugs, but I was addicted to that lifestyle. I had abandonment issues from my father. I had an addiction to sex because I was tampered with at such a young age, and I was over sexualized, you know, for so long. Um, my life was just it was just it was just a mess, you know. I had to when I wanted to get away from pimps, what I would do is I would steal in the store in plain sight, like, "Hi, I have this. I'm putting it in my
Yeah.
purse," you know, so I can get arrested, so I can go to juvenile hall and I could rest. You know, it
Hmm.
that was my cycle. I was constantly getting arrested for petty thefts. Um, as sad as it was, law enforcement at that time was not trauma informed, right? I was considered a hoe in their eyes. They would talk mess to me, you know, as they drove by. Um, the staff at juvenile hall, you know, sometimes weren't as pleasant either. If they knew that I was, you know, often working in those places, you know, every it's like every person that was there to help me, and not say every person, but in every sector of you know, support and help, I did not get that. And like I said, in the 90s, it was a very different thing. You know, this was right after the riots in 92 when I first got trafficked, right? And then at 18, I had met a notorious pimp, and I got the flu, and plus, you know, pimps don't care about that little lady time that we all have once a month, you know, and I had to work, and he wanted me to go to work. And I told him I can't. I couldn't even hold down water. It was my, you know, I probably had pneumonia. I don't know. It was really bad. And him and his friends beat me unconscious. I was found in an alley, naked and badly beaten, and was taken into the hospital as a Jane Doe. And that was the first time I ever told someone about what happened to me and told them my story. And it's this beautiful little Jamaican woman, who stayed with me even when she was off work. She still came into the hospital to check up on me and to make sure that I was okay. She went against a lot of codes and conduct in the hospital by telling me to tell them that I either don't remember my name or to give them a fictitious name, because she knew if that guy found me, he was going to kill me, because that was his intention on when he beat me so badly, you know, that night. And so when I got better, I she gave me some clothing. She bought me some clothes and gave me like a trash bag of hygiene items, and gave me $200 and told me to leave the state or I was going to get killed. And that $200 only got me so far. I started to travel around the US to spots that I've been to before, working the tracks. And I was working with gauze, band aids, you know, staples and stitches, you know. And it wasn't until I went to Chicago, of all places, Chicago, to feel safe. Like, what? Anyway, I ended up in Chicago. I ended up in Chicago, and you know, I continued to work. I was starting to work strip clubs, and you know, there were they had these like lockdown like parties, and where women could like, you know, it was more of a safe place for women to conduct those type of, you know, in that type of industry. And I started to work there, and you know, long story short, I met a man with three incredible kids, and he just reminded me like I have a daughter, and I need a positive role model for her if you want to be a part of my life. And because of the love of those kids, you know, he was a bonus. Not the kids weren't a bonus. He was the bonus. You know, because of those kids, that was my why of getting out of the life.
Mm.
So That's
Wow.
my story in a
Wow.
nutshell.
Yeah. Wow.
Ooh, that's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
You had mentioned also, and it's something that I know on our end out here, really trying to attack perception and policy in regards to victims, in regards to those that are in the life, in regards to viewpoints and things like that. Miss Young, how have what are some things that your agency and your organization has done to begin to shift the paradigm on how we treat those who are trapped in human trafficking or those we encounter, even just in the life, and that maybe it hasn't gotten to the legal terminology or legal terms of that. What are some of the things that you all are implementing to help with law enforcement and even in the education and in the medical field in terms of education?
So we do a lot of education on human trafficking prevention and things like that. But just like Kathy and Tika said, even looking at operations that are still going on right now, you'll see law enforcement arrested 50 people, but most of those are victims. So at our office, we don't do that. We're victim centered. We do trauma informed interviewing, as well as on our operations, when we do in-call or out-call operations, our whole goal of those operations is just to help and find the resources for our victims. I think that's a big step. We do have some tough times just because the resources that are offered and that people are getting sometimes aren't what they need. Some of our human trafficking resources, they say they have to be identified as human trafficking, but as well as anyone else, it's hard to talk about human trafficking, especially with law enforcement agents who know really nothing about that actual life, what that actual person goes through. They see a uniform or they see an authority figure that's standing there and they think, you're just here to arrest me. There's been so many times in all of our operations that we've taken a victim, they don't want to speak to us. And when I get an actual victim in, the first thing I tell them, you're not under arrest. If there's someone controlling you, if you're independent, what I just want to get you is the actual resources. Now there's someone controlling you, then we can actually get to that step where you're actually going to talk to us and trust us enough to tell us that. But I mean, even talking to a regular adult about sex is hard. Now you're trying to talk to someone else about the acts that they, have done or haven't done. Do you think they really want to talk to you about that? So
Right.
I think
Yep.
what we do in our office, just like I said, is a victim-centered approach. Everything is about that victim. So even on our operations, when a victim comes in, if there's someone who brings them there, then that's who we put all of our efforts in to talk to, because you're bringing this person here, what you're bringing them here for. Is it their actual pimp that's in the car that's actually bringing them here? So we see a lot of that, and those are the people that we try to get all the information from. The other thing that we try to do is, we talk to the victims and see if we can actually get their phone and see if they're not going to tell us, maybe, they can give us their phone. We can look through it, see the person who's calling them multiple times. And, I don't agree with exactly how our legal system is set up. For domestic violence cases, the state can prosecute those cases. But for our human trafficking cases, you're going to have the victim sit there and go in front of their trafficker and say, yep, it was him or her or whatever. You're going to actually have them sit there and say that, or you're going to put them on stand and have the defense attorney wreck their entire personal life that they went through and expect them to talk, and get that actual trafficker put away. So it's hard. So I think finding resources is our best option at first. Finding them housing, getting them back on their feet, not actually putting them in jail. And I mean, we've seen a lot of that, where the girls go to jail, they're off the street for a day, and then you have that pimp grabbing another person off the street or, grooming another person in their place. So it's not stopping the cycle. So I think getting the resources, having them actually open up and actually speak to us, then we can actually get that actual trafficker away from other people, and not re-victimize them. That's my idea of, the resources that we should get. sometimes. So
Following up on that,
It's
we got laws everywhere where things aren't being prosecuted like they used to. The penalties aren't the same like they used to. How's human trafficking? Are there penalties really deterring traffickers from engaging in this?
I think with stricter and stiffer penalties and actually getting that person off the street, then yes. But if law enforcement, promises these girls, promises these guys all the stuff they can do and they don't follow through, then there's no case because we didn't follow through on our end. So you don't have that victim there to speak to. So then I don't think it would really deter anyone, because they're not going to give up that trafficker, especially if we can't keep our side of the bargain,
Right.
getting them resources, getting them help. So I think there are stricter penalties, but I think the stricter penalties are, in the state of New Mexico, are more on the federal side than on our state side. We are trying to pass new legislation and everything like that and getting stricter penalties. But right now, I don't believe they're that strict.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you guys feel that, because we often go after the traffickers, but the demand side has very minimal penalties. I find that a lot of times our victims are more penalized than the sex buyers themselves. Do you all think that stiffer penalties and more intense penalties outside of what they call John School? And for those that don't know, it's basically a school where they go and say, don't get involved in prostitution because you could get a disease, and do some community service hours, not the fact that they are victimizing or, creating issues or things like that. Do you think that stricter penalties for sex buyers would be a better deterrent in addition to the prosecution of traffickers?
Yes, yeah, I
I think
totally agree with
I think
that. Like
so.
sorry.
Yeah.
Uh,
Go
on
ahead.
our side, on our side, arresting the John, it's a misdemeanor. Like that's all it is on our state. It's a traffic citation. So I think stricter penalties for our Johns would be great. Like what our office does is if we do an operation like that, we'll post their faces on the news and say these are the buyers that are buying sex out there, and these are your husbands and your teachers, and it could be anyone out there that's buying sex, and we
Yes.
put them on the news and say, here you go, these are the people that were caught in this operation. You know,
Yeah, those are the sort of things that we do for molesters, child molesters. If we did the same sort of thing for sex buyers, that would kind of deter that as well. Maybe even a database like they do with molesters as well. Megan's Law websites. Kind of put these are the ones that are in your neighborhood that are engaging in this. Maybe that'll help with the deterrent as well.
Um,
I know. Oh,
I,
Yeah.
I oh
Real,
sorry.
real quick, let me just read
I
this
just
comment from YouTube real quick. VV on YouTube says, Tika, your story is heartbreaking. Thank you for sharing, and the work you do with Journey Out organization, definitely eye-opening. Thank you for
thank
that
you,
comment.
Vivi. What I was going to say is it's the people that are usually getting caught for buying sex are the low-hanging fruit, right? There are some
mm,
people that and I really wouldn't want to put the penalty of having them register as a sex offender unless they're buying children. Because I understand that there are a lot of young guys that do this because they're socially awkward or whatever the case may be. And there are some creepy guys, yes. But the same thing, the way that they group in like prostitution and sex work and all those things, I wouldn't want those people to be grouped all in the same way as well. Okay. The guys that are most of my clients that I had that wanted to belittle me and wanted to beat me, those are not the guys that you guys are going to catch. You're not
Yeah.
going to catch those guys because these guys are men in power. Okay, so the ones
hmm
that you're catching are the ones that are just out for a good time and don't really have any true malicious intent. Their moral compass may be wrong and off, but there's a lot of different dynamics that go along with them. I am not pro sex work in any way, but I wouldn't want someone to have to suffer a lifetime for an idea of just having some fun, right? They don't know the dynamics. The class, as far as like John School, should be more intense. They should be longer. They should have to pay more fees because there's a lot of monies that are needed to help the clients that we are helping. Hitting them in their pockets, I think, is much more um,
Oh yeah.
doable and much more helpful in this scheme of things, right? Because let's be real, we're Black people. Most Black people and most Black girls are not looked at as victims. Okay, most of the services that are out there, they are not for people that look like me, right? Most of them are for people that look like someone else, someone who looks a little softer, someone who speaks a little, speaks well, someone who is faith based. That is not, 50%. It's not even 50%, 60% of the population that I'm touching, from day to day. So I just think that having more in depth, um, like penalty for Johns is needed, but I think that they need to help fight with the financial need for a lot of our survivor sisters in the victims of sex trafficking. Personally,
Yeah. Yeah. What are your
I
two
agree.
organizations, Kathy and Tika? What are your two organizations doing uh, directly with victims or survivors of sex trafficking and human trafficking? We can start with you, Kathy.
So 1211 Partners literally exists to fill in one of the gaps that was identified here, specifically in Texas, right? So we realized that there are so many services and comprehensive residential services and great things, great places. But as Tika pointed out, they're not for everyone. Everyone
Yeah.
doesn't fit in there. And so we created this organization literally for those who don't fit into regular programs, also those who have completed programs. I realized that I was getting a lot of calls. I've been mentoring forever, right? But I realized that a lot of my mentees were calling 2 years after they've graduated from programs, relapsed, right? And so they're like back into the same place or at risk of being re-exploited. And I just was like, okay, well, what's happening? Like, we're spending thousands and thousands, if not millions and millions of dollars for restorative care and restorative care programs, but yet individuals are not every individual is thriving. That's an issue. So 1211 Partners comes in to help people that choose not to go to programs, because programs are not for everyone, who have tried programs but it didn't work for them. And then for those individuals who have completed programs but still need that extra support, they go to these programs, and like I said, I love the programs, but they go to these programs and they learn all these life skills and how to cope with your trauma and how to identify triggers and stuff like that. But then after they graduate, it's like, okay, great, go be great, go take over the world. You're going to be awesome. But no one's showing them how to apply these skills. No one's walking with them in their journey to, like, what is it going to look like living by myself? What is it going to look like actually going to school by myself? Like, what is it going to look like raising these kids by myself? Because I no longer have the crutch of a program or, a safe home to like hold me up. And so, that's what 1211 Partners is. It's literally to walk alongside overcomers who don't fit in programs and who have completed restorative care programs, but still need the extra support. We do that through mentorship, career path development, and housing referrals. Practical things. You need a job. A lot of these programs are like, you learn how to write a resume and you do all these things and you get all these skills and go to get some training and you're going to be great. You can get this job. But what is that job? What does that job look like for me if I have a felony? What does that job look like for me if I have all these things on my record? What if I don't have what if I have a lack in education and all these things, right? So those things that we try to put in programs don't work for everyone. We got to step out and say, okay, practically, how can we do this? And how can you thrive in freedom? Not just graduate and work it. No offense to anyone that is interested in this job, but like not just graduate and be a cashier for the rest of my life. No, I really want to develop some skills and move on. So that's
And
why
move
we
up.
exist, 1211 Partners, really just partnering with overcomers of trafficking.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Yay! I'm so happy
That's
to
Yes.
hear that.
huge. That's super
Yes.
huge.
Yeah. 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 And journey out, Tika.
Oh, so Journey Out, we meet them where they are, whatever stage they are in that in their journey. That's where we're going to be at. We celebrate every milestone, whether it is catching one less date, um, uh, um, going out one last night, one less night than usual. Um, it could be getting out and finding a job, being, at McDonald's, or it could be going back to school, getting their GED. It could be that they finish reading a book. You know, it could be whatever stage in their life that they are in. That's where we meet them at. Like I said, we have the prostitution diversion program through the city attorney's office, and we also have the pre-diversion program that we're piloting right now. And then we also have we have hygiene. We have different partners that we work with. Housing has been the hardest and toughest part, because especially during COVID right now, a lot of the emergency shelters and the DV shelters are full. And then that is the issue as well. There aren't very many HT specific housing programs, right? And the ones that are available, um, they either have a limited amount of space, or the rules are so tough and so strict. It's really hard for someone to come out of the life, going into emergency shelter for 90 days, and breaking themselves of certain habits, or just not living a what is normal, but a normal life, to where they have responsibilities and rules in a household, right? And then you also have we have different groups. Our groups, some of the groups that we have are, for substance abuse, for mental health, or just support. I myself, I believe that financial literacy is very, very important. But I do financial literacy my way. Okay. I had a sixth grade education. I got my GED at 35 years old. And, but I understood money and business and finances at a very young age, because I did a lot of the reading myself. I've always been a sort of a bookworm, and where being of service is my purpose, but business has always been my passion, right? And so I let these ladies know, look, if you can sell a little strange for a little bit of change, you are already a businesswoman, honey. Okay. There is nothing that you can't do in the world of business. And so I make sure that I let them understand what business is and what it looks like. Um, Coming from someone who had to, I had a felony, I have a felony that I caught with my pimp at the age of 18. And I had to, in trying to find employment, I couldn't come through the front door. I had to come through the side window. So I had to show women how that looked, right? And then I got out of my relationship and left from Chicago and came back to California. I was homeless, right? And I was living on Santa Monica Pier for 9 months. And I had to let them know what that looked like. It's going to take some sacrifice, honey. If you really want it, this is what you're going to have to do, right? And I read them through everything. Look, I had to learn how to do hair care by having, um olive oil and coconut oil. And I didn't want to go back to life. If you don't want to go back to the life, don't. It's going to be hard. This process is not going to be easy for you. And then we have our great survivor sisters and our great staff here that comes from all different walks of life, right? And we have people that have their master's degree, that have their doctorate, that are just starting out in college. And so we have a lot of, role models here that can show them different stages of life, or different ways of doing things, right? And so we are not just an organization that is by the book, or a curriculum of how to do things. We also put our personal lives into these people that come through our doors, right? We let them know about how we got to do things, and we also are transparent in some of the struggles that we've had in life, so that we let them know, look, we're not different than you. Some of us are just as screwed up as y'all, think that y'all are. Therapy is not there to fix you. Therapy is there to help you cope with things in life, right? And you just, it's okay, because a lot of our brown and black sisters, they never thought of therapy as a way of helping them, because it's, especially in my generation, that's what white people do when they're crazy. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So we have to be transparent about what we do and who we are in order to get them where we are. We are a one-stop shop. We don't have everything, but we try our hardest to get whatever resources that are needed to fit the needs of our sisters, our LGBTQ plus sisters and brothers, and our anyone who might need us. So, in a
Yeah.
nutshell, that's what we do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I wanted to touch on that real quick with the three of you. The three of you are all female, and Tika and Kathy, you two are female that were involved in the life. But it's not just with females. Is that correct? I mean, we've got all ages, all sexes, all walks of life that are involved in this. Can you talk on any other victims that you came across in your life while you were in that lifestyle that were that were males that were caught up in it, that were young, just like you, that were caught up in it as well?
Well, I have also seen there's been an uptick of transgender women they've always been victimized, but they're starting to realize that they are victims as well.
Mm.
Some of them are just seeing it as, well, these are the only options that we have. And by labeling as survival sex, make it seem like it's okay. And there takes away from their victimization in some way when classify it as survival sex. But I am actually working with a client who is probably one of the first clients that is going against her pimp in LA County, which is amazing and a beautiful thing to see. Not the situation, but just that the systems are taking her very seriously, as a LGBTQ plus, a part of that community. But there have been a few men that are understanding that just because this person calls you a family member, right? And say that this is for the betterment of our family, and no one will understand outside of the LGBTQ plus community what they go through, right? A lot of them are understanding that that forced fraud or coercion piece, it goes along with what's going on in their community as well. And then there's have been children. I think one of the partner agencies that we work with, I believe that they have a 10-year-old that was recovered. I think she was recovered at the age of 7, and I believe she's 10 years old now. And
Wow.
there have been children like all around, the world, but also in the US, in our very own backyards, as young as 3, that I have heard of, specifically, that are being trafficked. And it seems like a lot of young boys are under the radar for trafficking, and
Right.
that are in these trafficking rings that a lot of people are not aware of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I would say, sex trafficking does not discriminate, right? And it doesn't necessarily target people, it targets vulnerabilities. So if we've ever been vulnerable at any point in your life, you were at risk or could have been at risk if you're not aware of it to be trafficked. And so I think that's one of the misconceptions that I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, males, they're an underserved population in this because a lot of them don't know how to speak out about it, right? We're just starting to get our females to understand what this is, let alone our males. And so that's one thing that it doesn't discriminate. Yes, there are boys. Yes, there are girls. Yes, there are men, and yes, there are women that have been
That's
trafficked.
Yeah, absolutely. And producer Liz, if you can pull up that comment that we had here just a second ago. got VVV again on YouTube saying, how can we protect our children, or can we at all?
I think
We absolutely can.
the awareness.
Yes, everybody agrees with that. Everybody agrees with that.
Yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Awareness is a huge piece. Being aware and understanding the facts, understanding the myths and the misconceptions. And if you can educate yourself to where you can educate other people, that is a huge step right there, right? And then if you see something, say something. There are hotlines, the Human Trafficking Awareness Hotline. Um, y- you know, um, be careful. Okay, I got to put this out there. Be careful. Do not put yourself in a situation, okay? Trying to help a situation, but get as many identifying information as you possibly can. If it's a vehicle, what color, what make, model, driver's license, if it's a person, if there's any scars, any tattoos or anything like that. Or if you can, a description of the person, like, if you can sneak a picture or a video in, that's great, but be careful. Do not put yourself
Be
at,
careful.
at in immediate danger. But as much information that you can remember and that you can think about, the better. And just call in. If you see something, say something, please.
See something, say something. Absolutely.
Yeah,
So
prevention is
go ahead, Kathy.
prevention is the first thing, right? But we have to our fans start talking about this stuff. It is uncomfortable. Nobody wants to talk about it. It's even hard to talk about sex. I don't know what is a good age for every individual, right? It's going to be different, but as soon as you can start talking about boundaries and personal boundaries and touch and stuff like that as young as like toddler age. You just start letting them know how to protect their bodies, how to tell mommy, how to tell daddy, how to tell a trusted person that something is happening. And then we need to start number two, believing our children. I don't care what it is, call me crazy, but if my daughter tells me anything, I'm there. Like, what is happening? We need to investigate this until, innocent, until proven otherwise, right? Like you need to start believing our children. And then having, like I said, having these conversations. You start with your family first. Self-awareness, number one. Number two, your family. Number three, your community. And that's how we're going to prevent our kids from getting caught up. Social media, I call that like the traffickers' hunting ground. They all over social media, and our kids are all over social media, posting everything about their day, everything about their little feelings and everything, right? So we need to be more proactive as parents and community members and teachers and people that, as stakeholders, like we need to be responsible for our children. And so get to know about this yourself, number one. Number two, tell your family. Number three, tell your community. Number four, that's how we're going to protect our children.
That's right.
And I agree with that as well, because there's a lot of parents that they don't know what their kids are doing. And I'm kind of concerned with that. I'm like, your daughter's 11 and they're on TikTok. And you don't know exactly what they're doing, why they're posting. I'm like, I think the actual age to be on TikTok is 13 or 14, but you haven't checked your child's phone because, it's invasion of privacy. Like, but this is where the traffickers are, and this is how they're grooming our children out there.
Yes.
So we need to actually know what they're doing.
Right. I'm like, Chica, like, you ain't got no privacy in my house.
No.
Privacy,
what's that?
Sorry, but
you get privacy
what is
in your
that?
house, and I'm still getting the key. 40 years old.
Like
I'm coming in.
Yeah, there's this big thing that these kids got rights that we didn't have when we were kids, and that's why it blows my mind. They're like, when certain laws were passed, about children's, protecting their rights, and I'm like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
A lot of it
Right.
is really ridiculous, and so
Parents are afraid to
it makes
parent.
it hard. Yeah, it makes it hard for a lot of parents. But I say, look, if you pay that bill, you can do
no
whatever
doubt.
you want. You paying the roof, the lights, all that stuff. You can do whatever you look. What you doing? Where you at?
No
Look.
doubt.
Yes, I have. Yes, I have a GPS on your phone. Yes, I'm going to
Right.
ask you for your phone. Don't
Yes.
you lock that phone up? Are
Yep.
you crazy?
Yep.
You
And,
know,
and,
I
and they don't
strong believer
realize
in
that we're doing it for their own good. They just don't realize that.
Yes.
They do when they become our age, but when they're stuck in it, as a teenager, they don't realize that. So, we're not here to be their friends. We're here to be their parents. So, It is what it
I think
Yeah,
is.
we
parents are
have.
But
younger
also
these days
have
too.
a,
Hmm.
yeah, that's true. Have an
Parents
open
are
line of
younger these days.
communication with your kids at the same time.
Yeah.
You think parents are younger these days, huh? Yeah,
Parents are younger these
yeah,
days, and so
yeah,
you see the mom and the child with nails like out to here, both the same. You don't know who the mom is and who the child is because everybody's like, you're just
yeah,
dressed the same way and stuff like that. And so I think culturally, just we need to understand that this thing is real. Trafficking doesn't exist culturally to some, especially to the younger generation. It's like, oh, okay, that ain't gonna happen to me. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Prostitution, the pimp hoe culture they may get, but not like trafficking. Come on now. Like my daughter's not gonna be trafficked is cool. So it's okay for her to be on TikTok with itty bitty shorts and long, long, long nails and doing pucky lips and stuff like that at 11 years old, right? Because it's cute.
all right,
But we need to educate our parents, our younger parents, especially, just to make sure that we're protecting those babies as well.
right. We gotta let
And then
mom know
also the
first.
ones,
First of all, we gotta let mom know it ain't cute when she's doing it. So let alone when
yeah,
daughter doing it. So
I was I was gonna say the exact same
yeah,
thing. A lot of these parents need to fix their own stuff,
mm-hmm,
right? And their own traumas before they can go and tell their children anything. So
yeah,
I
exactly.
definitely believe in
Yeah.
that.
I
Yeah, and I
want to
think
piggyback too on well on what you guys were saying also earlier about stranger danger myths and conceptions like, oh, stranger danger, and we're doing these things that really aren't fruitful, when more than likely our kids are going to be victimized by those who they know. It's going to be a family, it's going to be someone who's in the circle of trust, whether it's a neighborhood friend or a neighborhood parent or someone else. And then also, when you're educating your kids, stay away from terms like good touch, bad touch, because their bodies are still physically going to respond. And so if it felt good to me, even though I know I wasn't supposed to be doing this, then this must make me a bad person also. So I think really
Hmm.
educating and being intentional on the nuances of words, as opposed to these are the boundaries. And if someone crosses this boundary, you should talk to me, or it's okay to tell me if this is a safe place. Or even if you're an educator, it's okay, this is a safe place, and not leave it to those nuances of good and bad, and or right or
Hmm.
wrong, because then they're afraid, because now I liked what happened to my body because I'm not really sure what happened, and so I must be the bad person and I'm going to get in trouble, and so they're
Yeah,
afraid to tell also.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Fortunately. So real quick, before we get out of here, ladies, what can we as law enforcement do better in this fight against human trafficking? We'll start with Kathy and Tika, and then Deanna, you can round that out. What can we do better in law enforcement?
This is a whole nother show. I'll let Tika go first though.
right. And I was like, oh damn. Oh.
Hey, we're here
So
for it. So go ahead.
since I have been working very closely with the Vice Human Trafficking Task Force in LA County. Well, first of all, our former ED is a retired sergeant of LAPD. Her name is Dr. Powell. She was Sergeant Payne when she was working with us, and she really bridged in the gap between law enforcement and service providers, as well as with survivors as well. She gave me a platform to where I could go in and talk to them and train them on certain things that are outside of what is in their normal trainings. And then, like I said, I have been working very closely, especially with the West Bureau for Human Trafficking Task Force, and I have seen, you know, officers and sergeants come and go. I can see them being a little cold towards the victims or with the detainees when they first came in. But then you start to see that shell break away because they understand that these are not just people that are engaging in an illegal um, um, thing. They are actual people as well. And they start to learn about their stories, and they start asking me questions about certain ways of the way that they're thinking. And I think that a lot of officers, well, everyone doesn't get a chance to be a part of Vice, and I'm understanding of that. But there should be a time where they should be able to work with organizations, because safety and security is something that we definitely need for our survivors when they're going to court, and or when they're being transported from different places, to pick up items from hotel rooms. Those patrol officers should be working with nonprofits as well for a short bit of time, to just kind of let them see the different scopes of these people that they're seeing as criminals or what have you. Then a lot of the officers do not come from the same area, right? They don't come from the same um cities, or they've never lived in the type of, areas that we've lived in. So cultural competence, it needs to be tightened up just a tad bit more, so they can understand the population that they're working with. Like I tell officers all the time, I grew up in the jungles, and I did not know as a child that this is a high crime area. I didn't know what that was. This is my normal, right? So when the police officer pulls over, and while I'm in like elementary school or junior high school, and puts my friends up against a wall, this is what I'm thinking of law enforcement in the very beginning, right? This is the the introduction to law enforcement for me. Not understanding that this is a high crime area, and a lot of people have drugs and guns in this area. I don't understand that as a child. They need to understand the whole idea, or the whole mentality. My grandmother lived in an area, during Jim Crow, where law enforcement wasn't too kind to them, right? So my grandmother always instilled fear in us when it came to law enforcement, and she had a level of no respect for law enforcement because of the things that she encountered in her lifetime. And that's why I say, um, cultural competence, it's very, very important. You have to understand why people, generationally, have a dislike for law enforcement. It's not because you have a badge. No, there's a lot of history that goes along behind that. And
Right.
I think that there needs to be more, the stuff that they have in these suburban cities, you know, uh, and as far as meeting the captain or the chief, and them doing community projects in the area. I think the areas that need the most help need to be helped by the people that are also there to protect them as well. If they see us, we see you guys, on an off day or some overtime, helping to paint a building that is um, for after school program or something like that, that could help out. Let's have some open dialogue with the people that are supposed to protect who we are, and a lot of us don't see them as them protecting us.
Yeah.
We see them as them policing us. So,
Yes.
that needs to change.
That's good.
Yeah. Real good. Kathy, go ahead.
Absolutely. Yeah. So speaking to like some ways that law enforcement can do better, I think that we need to really just incorporate better trainings, trauma informed and victim centered trainings, starting at police academy, right? And then consistently after that, so that we are making sure that the people that are on the street are informed and know who they're. Secondly, I would say that survivors see victims as people. They have a story. Like, one thing that we need to understand is that everyone has a story. You never know someone's why for being out there, right? I don't care how much they may be hard on the exterior or whatever. We always have a story. Like, there's always a story. We all have them. And so when you encounter, sometimes law enforcement is that very first person that you can be, that very first point of contact for that whole restorative journey, if you just make sure that you are kind, that you're seeing them as a human being, that you are listening, that you are, you know what I mean? Like, even if he or she is engaged in a crime, there's a way that you can do that without, like, calling them out of their name or whatever the case may be. I did an operation not too long ago, and this one girl, like she's like the one that keeps bringing me to tears because she was so bad, and you can just see it. And so when I began to through to her, like, what's your experience, she laughing at me. I told them I was cool, and all I could hear was the law enforcement officers laughing at me, and now they expect me to give them information. I'm confused. Like, they were the ones that were just calling me ho. They were the ones that were just calling me, oh, she's skinny, anorexic, like, who would buy her, da-da-da-da. She heard all of this. She sees all of this, right? One thing that you need to know, like, when we're out there, when victims are out there, you have to be vigilant. You have to pay attention to your surroundings. You pay attention to every single detail. So that first point of contact, you have to be mindful that she's watching. He or she, they're watching every move. They're watching if you smirk when you say something. They're trying to figure out where the lie is, right? Because, yeah, that historical trauma is real, especially on the street, culturally, right? Generational trauma. Like, I'm already not to trust you. So how are you going to break that barrier? So I think law enforcement needs to come in with, just individual blinders, like individual lenses on, so that they can see who they're dealing with, that they can be mindful of their actions, be mindful of their words, because you may be that person that will set someone up for the entire future. When I was out in the game, I had one good law enforcement encounter, and I will never ever forget it. I don't remember his face, but I remember his eyes, because he was the first person that was like, he said, I was on the blade, and he was like, you shouldn't be out here. I looked like I shouldn't be. I was green. And so he was like, you don't belong out here, do you? And I was like, yes, I do. Gave him fake name and all that kind of stuff. And he looked me in the eyes. He pulled me to the side. He said, listen, if you tell me that you're not supposed to be out here, I will help you. And that was the first time I believed a law enforcement, because he looked me in my eyes. There was no smirk. There was no sarcasm. There was no nothing. He was like, your mama looking for you. I know your mama looking for you. And so if you're not supposed to be here, tell me your true identity and I will get you out of here. But I was surrounded and stuff like that. So I lied and I took the charge, or whatever the case may be, but I never forgot it. And so now, even, 16 years out the game, I still remember his eyes. And so I have that one good experience with law enforcement that is with me till this day, the rest of my life. If he was the one that, the survivor that I was helping, if he was the one that was saying, oh, you this, you that, and laughing at me, how do you think my journey would have ended up? I wouldn't be here on this podcast, probably, right? Because he was the first person that I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Like, maybe there is a chance for me to get out. So you have to make sure that you are seeing the individual for the individual. You never know the story behind it. I don't care how she looks, and I don't care if he or she is cussing you out. I don't care if they're combative. You never know their story. So treat them as such. Treat them as humans.
Absolutely.
Preach.
Yep. So we got a problem here?
Yeah.
Yep. Oh,
Oh,
sorry
there we
about
go.
that. Can you hear me? Hey.
Yeah.
Yep. All right.
Yep. You're in.
Yeah, here we go. Deanna, go ahead last.
I agree with both of these ladies for law enforcement. One thing I will say is, if you're on patrol, get out of your car. Go walk the street. Go talk to these people that are out there. Go get to know them. The other thing that I would say is, go have, like, on your day off, we have a shelter here that houses children and adults, 2 shelters. Children and adults are separated, but go out there and have breakfast with them, have lunch with them, sit there and talk to them, so they can actually see you, see us as being human. Sometimes when we get out of the academy, we think it's just black and white, and it's not. It's, there's those gray areas, and you just have to talk to people like they're people. And, you give them respect, they'll give you respect. That's it. If you say you're going to do something, do it. So when I had one of my girls that I had, I'm like, hey, what do you like to eat? She's like, Takis. I'm like, oh, awesome. Next time I come, I'll bring you Takis. You know what? I bring her Takis. And she spoke to us the entire time. But if you come there without anything, after you promised her that, or promised him that you're going to bring them something, you're not going with your promises. You're just telling them lies every single time. So they just want us to know that they can trust you, because they already, people don't have a trust of law enforcement. But if we can show them that we're human and that we can stand by our promises and the promises that we actually can stand by, and, you know, just treat them as human, I think law enforcement will be great. And also, like they said, you know, putting that victim first, trauma-informed interviewing, you know, our victim-centered approaches, and not re-victimizing them. No one wants to talk about trauma out the gate. So get to know them first. Have them get to know you, you know, where you come from, you know, and then, you know, tell them your story so they can tell you theirs. So that's what I'll say.
Yeah.
All right.
Good.
Love your stories, ladies. All of you love your stories here. We appreciate you for coming on and sharing your stories with us. This is real good. I hope you guys out there like this conversation as well. This will be replayed for time and time again on YouTube and Facebook. So make sure you check it out. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. We're on Twitter. I hope you guys like this conversation, because I know I did. I'm sure Elizabeth did as well, right?
Absolutely. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for just pouring into us, Del and I, but even our listeners and stuff, and making an impact. So thank you, ladies.
Yes, thank you. Love it. We love you. Love you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for this episode of Black Blue Live. That was some good stuff there. What do you think about that one, Elizabeth?
The doors of the church are now open. Come on
Yes.
in, come on in.
Yes, indeed. So we thank you guys for joining us. Make sure you come back next time. We're going to have some more guests, more fun, more education. My name is Dale. That's Lizzie right there. We'll see you next time. Yeah. We out.
This has been a Maitre D Entertainment presentation.